Cześć, tutaj Moni and welcome to Learn Polish with Advanced Lesson 21. Today we are going to explore conjugation in Polish, and as it is a quite challenging subject, I am going to take it easy. You may have been taught differently to how I'm going to explain it, but I think learning on the examples of verbs rather than just endings and different types of conjugations, it's much more efficient, much more easier for students. So we are going to, or you are going to learn verbs, patterns for those verbs, so that rather than worrying about what conjugation you are dealing with, I'm going to explain it anyway and give you the type of conjugation as well. But rather than worrying about what conjugations a particular verb belongs to, you are going to learn the pattern. So then, when you are actually faced with a verb that you don't know, you can kind of match or link it with the ones that you know, so that you are correct or almost correct, as there are a lot of exceptions. So today I'm just going to go through verbs that you see here and explain the conjugations. I'm not going to go into endings yet, but I'm going to explain the conjugations and the verbs that we will be working on. And our next lesson will be taking each conjugation and a few lessons actually, and looking at this conjugation a little bit closer. So to those of you who already are intermediate or advanced in Polish, you may find this challenging and not always each pattern works, and you may be a little bit confused, not sure, and this is absolutely fine. So even more so, the beginners, don't worry at all about getting it right at the very beginning. You won't, or even well done to you if you do. But if you won't, don't worry about it. It takes some time getting used to, and it gets practice. So you need practicing. So don't worry too much. Don't try to getting it perfect at the very beginning. Just try to get the information, learn everything, and then understanding it's the key for at the very beginning. So as you can see, let's start. As you can see, I wrote here in Polish, so I hope it's not going to be too confusing for you, but we've got three main types of conjugations, three types, but we can also add a fourth type, which is for irregular verbs that don't really follow any pattern. So we can say we've got some kind of pattern for the first conjugation, second, third, and no pattern for irregular verbs. They have to be learned by heart in order to know how they conjugate. In other words, how they change according to a grammatical person. So let's look at the verbs that we've got here. All of them are in infinitive. So they are infinitives, which means they are in a default unchanged state, if you like. So here we've got to cook, as opposed to I cook, she cooks, we cook. We've got to cook, so unchanged, kind of naked version of a verb, gotować, and you can identify an infinitive by looking at the very end of the word, of the verb. You will see that if it ends with a C accent, it's an infinitive mostly. There are a few verbs that don't end with C accent, but with a C, but most of them, majority of them do. So let's not talk about exceptions at this stage, but just the normal verbs. You can see that each verb here ends with C accent, right? So that's to cook, gotować. This one is new for you, which is to write, pisać. And I already wrote here, I'm a weirdo, so you will see that there are certain groups that are quite weird. So pisać, to write, wstawać, to get up, pić, to drink. And I deliberately put this icon upside down so that you've got a J letter here created by this little straw here, little straw. So peach, to drink, robić, to do. You already know that verb. Robić, tańczyć, new verb, to dance, tańczyć, to understand, rozumieć, to understand, and to love, kochać. And how I'm going to teach you conjugation is you will be required to learn these patterns, these verbs by heart. So next time you hear the verb, you kind of link it straight away with the verb you know, and it's a better way than just learning endings. Although, of course, I'll discuss endings as well. But the best way is to learn the pattern. Once again, I need to stress that, to learn the pattern. So let's start with the first conjugation. Those of you who like the grammar, you can make note that this is the first conjugation. And here we've got the first verb, which will be our template. This is the verb to cook, and you can see that it ends ować, right? Not just ać like these ones here, but ować. So always look a little bit closer at what you've got around the C accent letter, right? The last consonant. So don't just assume, okay, this is C accent and that's it, it's ać, right? I know how to change that verb, conjugate it, because you may get it wrong if you don't look a little bit closer. This is not just ać, this is ować, and this is the first type of a verb that we are going to look at. So ować, when you see the verb that ends ować, right, it will follow a specific pattern. Next time we will look at this pattern. First, I want to analyze each verb for you, and then we will learn the pattern. So don't worry about looking here and changing it straight away. No, there will be time for it yet. So gotować, that's the first type of the verb that we will learn how to conjugate, and that's I call it an ować verb. Ować verb. First conjugation, for those of you who want to know, that's a first conjugation. And you can also see straight away that there's a lot of L and sh in Polish right here. So this will give you, this is just a guideline, right? And it will give you the ending for the first and the second person. First and second person. First and second person. So you know already there will be a lot of L and a lot of sh, right? So that's a guideline. So now, ować verb, right? There is a verb, it's a verb that ends ować, and it belongs to the first conjugation, and it will follow certain pattern. Now, there is also another type of verbs ending almost the same way, in the same way, awać, right? So just one letter difference, awać. It also belongs to the first conjugation. You don't really need to know this. Don't feel pressure that you need to know what conjugation this is. No, you don't need to, because you will learn by heart how to change this. So just notice that this is the one letter difference. When you hear ować or awać, you will straight away know how to change that verb, conjugate it, following a special pattern. So these types of verbs are quite easy, okay? They are not troublesome. Ować ends in this way, conjugates in this way. Awać conjugates in this way, right? Now, in this group, we also have verbs that ends ać, and you can see that this ends ać, and this as well ends ać. So we can, you can ask, right? Okay, so what is the difference? Well, there is no much of a difference. That's the answer. The difficulty of this is that you will need to learn certain verbs by heart, because there will be no chance of determining whether, okay, is that pattern or maybe this pattern, just looking at this type of verb, right? There are certain verbs that ends ać, have s and conjugate like this. And there are also another, I know verbs that ends ach, have s, and conjugate like that. So what I can tell you is when we've got ach verbs, all right, I can genuinely say that about 70% of them will have this pattern. About 70 of them will have this pattern, but about 30 of them, there's a chance that 30% of verbs will have a different conjugation, different pattern. And also you will see that some of them will get additional z. Sometimes there will be something different here. So what is the recipe of getting it right is to take the verb, put it in a dictionary. I'm going to give you the link to a very good free dictionary that you can type the verb, and it gives you all patterns, the conjugation, so you know how to change that verb. Free dictionary, really, really highly recommended. And just to learn what it is, because, okay, you may risk it and change the ach verbs in that way, but you may be wrong. This verb may just be in this 30% group, and you may get it wrong. So it's important to investigate a little bit more when it comes to adverbs. If you have a private tuition, your tutor, your teacher should tell you what conjugation this is, how to change a specific verb. Each time you come across the verb ach, ending ach, you should be taught or guided into what conjugation this is. But if you don't, you can make it yourself. You can just type the verb and just inquire yourself. So that's why I put here, I'm a weirdo, because you need to investigate a little bit more, okay? Ach verb, so you need a little bit more. Now, when we've got one syllable verbs like to drink, peach, for instance, peach, beach, to beat, a veach, to weave, for instance, one syllable verbs, they like this type of conjugation, this pattern very much, and they usually get additional J letter in the middle. When I go into deeper details, more details, when we talk about conjugations specifically, together with changing and conjugating them, I will tell you how it works. But for now, I just want you to link one syllable verbs with the J letter, and I deliberately made it this upside down drink with a straw, kind of looking like a J letter. Every little helps here, really. Any mnemonic will help. So peach, one syllable verbs could have that patterns, okay? Very, very great chance that they will do. Now, so let's summarize the first conjugation without looking at patterns just yet. We've got ować, awać verbs, easy pattern, as you will soon see. We've got ach verbs that will have to be looked into. It might be this type, but it might be this one. And we also have one syllable verbs that will follow this pattern, but will have additional J letter. So this is what I need you to know for now, okay? Nothing more when it comes to conjugation. If we started now conjugating, changing, it might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to divide it into a few parts. Now, you already know the verb robić, don't you? You know robić and you know lubić as well. So these verbs that end ich, right, will usually follow that pattern, right? They usually follow that pattern. So therefore you are learning robić, lubić, lubię, lubisz, lubi, lubimy, lubicie, lubią. You already have that in a previous lesson. If you don't remember, go back to that lesson and try to refresh your memory. So robić, okay, so each verbs, right, will have a certain pattern, not too complicated, so nothing to worry about. But we will also have or have to investigate a little bit these kind of consonants, right? So again, we will have to look a little bit closer, right? When we've got C accent, right? When we've got each, usually that pattern. But if we've got CZ or SZ or DZ, CZ is here, right? So that's our example with CZ. DZ dot, Z dot, or RZ, and some kind of Epsilon and C. So these are the consonant in question, right? We will then use this particular pattern for this type of verbs. So tańczyć here, to dance, is our example of verbs that will have these strange consonants in the stem, right? So robić is our each verb, and this is the pattern. Tańczyć is our example of the verb that have the strange consonant in the side, and this will be our pattern as well. Okay, so that will be our example of conjugation number 2, the second conjugation, right? And now again, how to do it, how to change it, how to conjugate it, you will learn that very, very soon. Not today, but very, very soon. So now we also have a third conjugation and also group of irregular verbs that I will talk today. Again, as I said a while ago, we had ach here, and we also have ach here. So we need to make sure that we know which conjugation it is, because we cannot just by the ending determine whether it's this one or this one. Unfortunately, I wish it was a little bit easier than that. But we know that majority, okay, of ach verbs will follow that pattern, right? Majority of them. Now, so that would be our ach verbs for the third conjugation, right? And we will have a special endings that we will apply to conjugate these verbs in specific in a particular grammatical person, okay? But we also have, and you can see another little asterisk there, we also have a group of verbs ending ech, right? Or mieć, somebody says mieć like this one, but please do not look at it as mieć, rather ech, so C accent, and these are also a little bit troublesome, okay? Because some of verbs ending ech, right, will belong to this conjugation. Let me give you example. So as you can see, this is a verb in infinitive, słyszeć, and that means to hear, okay? Now, you may think, okay, it's easy accent like this one here, like to know. I know the pattern, but what you're not seeing here is the SZ here. And because we've got this SZ here, this will be our pattern. This verb will conjugate like tańczyć. So in other words, we cannot just say for these types of verbs that the ending is ch or ech, and that's the pattern. We have to look a little bit closer. So here, okay, it's CZYC accent, and this one is SZE accent, right? C accent, right? But because we've got this SZ, this will be the second conjugation. This weird letter takes the precedence. It's more important, right? So don't just look at the ending H. Investigate a little bit more. Exactly the same as with gotować. Don't just look at H, because it could be then whatever. You just need to look a little bit closer. It's ować, right? The same with słyszeć. I will practice with you all sorts of verbs so you can get it right. So I will make sure that you are quite confident in determining the conjugation of the verbs. So słyszeć, although it's edge, don't assume it's there. It's there because of the SZ. Okay? Just let's leave it for now. So usually, so rozumieć is to understand, but we've got another verb, umieć, kind of looking like half of rozumieć, umieć, to be able to, or to know, to be able to have a skill as well. And it will be exactly the same conjugation. Umieć will have the same pattern, as almost as if we just sliced this verb, took away roz, and it will be the same pattern. So unless, or maybe differently, if you don't have any strange looking consonant, right, then you can assume that it's very good chance that this is this pattern, right? So rozumieć will be our verb, that will be our template verb, and by learning it by heart, you will be able to apply this, maybe not a rule, because there are too many exceptions to make it a rule, but you'll be able to be a little bit more confident into when it comes to verbs. Now, so mieć and być are two examples of irregular verbs. Now, this is a very good example of why shouldn't we just look at the endings itself and just thinking, oh yeah, it's definitely that one, right? Looking at rozumieć, right, and then looking at mieć, you may be thinking, oh, right, so it's like mieć must be like rozumieć, right? It's almost the same verb, right? But it's not. You will have to learn that być and mieć are exceptions, are irregular verbs, and this verb you already know how to conjugate it. Ja jestem, ty jesteś. It's exactly the same as in English. To be, but then I am, you are. You not say I be, you be, she bees. You say I am, you are, she is. So it's completely different conjugation, and exactly the same in Polish. And to have is exactly the same. We say ja mam, you will learn this conjugation soon. Ja mam, ty masz, ona ma. So it's a different form. It just changes completely differently. So to summarize this lesson, we've got 4 types of conjugations, really. 3 types plus 1 irregular group, maybe to be precise. We've got first conjugation, second conjugation, third conjugation, and irregular group. Some linguists even distinguish between more groups, but we don't need to worry about it for now. So for you, the best way of starting learning about conjugation is to learn 3 groups and then irregular group. Let's start from the very end. In your irregular group, you will be learning how to conjugate być and mieć. You already know how to conjugate być. If you forgot, if you're unsure, go back to the lesson when we did that, to refresh your memory, and we will also you will learn how to conjugate mieć as another irregular verb. So that will be two examples of irregular group. We cannot say pattern because it's irregular. There is no pattern really. We just need to learn it by heart. In conjugation 3, oh, actually, let's make it 1, not to confuse you too much, sorry. So in conjugation 1, we will have 4 templates, okay? We will have ować verb, gotować will be our specific particular verb to look at, gotować to cook. We will have wstawać to get up, awać ending. We will have 1 syllable verb pić as a template, to drink, that will get additional J letter. And we will also have verbs ending ać, which I will always tell you whether it's either first or third conjugation, or if you do some homework or some self-studying, you will have to check this in a dictionary to make sure that the verb you're dealing with is first or third. So we never know, in other words, when it comes to ać. We need to check. That's why it's got the asterisk, and I'm a weirdo about this. In second conjugation, we deal with verbs ending ić, like robić, that will follow certain pattern. Verbs ending ć, however, also eć, depending, right? We need to investigate a little bit more when it comes to ić or eć, because we might deal with S, Z, C, Z, D, Z, D, Z, D, Z dot, Z dot, R, Z, and then it will be, if we have one of those consonants, it will most probably follow that pattern, right? In our conjugation number 3, we will have ać verbs with a very straightforward pattern, but we need to make sure that we know it's the third one, not the first one, right? Then if it's the third one, yes, that will be pretty easy. And then we also have verbs ending eć, but they could be troublesome because we need to look a little bit deeper into the stem, seeing maybe, looking at it and really determining whether we've got maybe one of those strange consonants. If we do, then we need to conjugate it in that way, not that way. Usually umieć, rozumieć will have that pattern, but there will be also a lot of ieć verbs, right? Ieć, that will conjugate like that simply because they will have that letter there. So be careful with this types of verbs. And that's it, I think. Yeah, I already explained kochać, ać verbs, and I already said a little bit more about the irregular group. So that is a good introduction, and you may understand now why I don't want to bombard you straight away with patterns and conjugations and everything at once in one video. It would be too much. So what we are going to do next, we are going to look in each lesson at particular conjugation. So next lesson, just conjugation number 1 and those verbs, right? Those 4 patterns. Next lesson, a lesson after, we'll be exploring a little bit of these verbs. Next lesson after that, these and irregular verbs after. So in that way, I hope you will feel a little bit more confident in what the conjugation could be. Again, don't worry if you get it wrong. A lot of people get it wrong, trust me, and it's not that easy. There is something that you have to learn by heart, but I think once you get those verbs memorized, right, it's a great chance that next time you see a verb, you will be able to link it somehow to one of the groups rather than just learn the endings and just kind of guess it and hope that you get it right. All right, thank you very much for today, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope I wasn't too to complicate explaining it in a complicated way. And I'll see you. I'll hear you next time. Bye.